Well, let me tell you about what's happening at the Ghana Revenue Authority, because workers of that authority, which is the country's foremost revenue collection agency, are accusing management of the organization and some politicians of interference in their work that's leading to significant losses of potential revenue to the state. They fell short of mentioning names, but they said that the extent of interference is such that it will make it very difficult for them to meet their revenue target for this year. At Adeba in Accra, the workers raised concerns about this and other cases of impediment they say are hampering operation of the GRA. They cite, for example, the irregular recruitment of personnel into the service, people whose competence they say usually are in doubt due to their poor performance. Latif Idrisu was at Adeba, he reports.
You, anybody who mistakenly step on my foot, I swear, go. Thank you.
A staff of GRA expressing some misgivings at the agency, a phenomenon that majority of her colleagues say is deflating morale of the staff.
And let me tell you, they are creating enmity between us. The same people who came in through political appointments have their children as clearing agents who are using exemptions to clear goods. Is that not conflict of interest? Tell me. Those of us who had the job on the silver platter, and then you think that you should help or you should work for your superiorities. Me, I don't see them as such, because they are not God. Those godfathers, if God said they should die now, they are going to die.
When you report some of these things, our big man, they will not mind you. You remove the barriers, that what protocol. It's not our protocols. Sometimes now, when somebody escapes or is able to come out at Temaport with a container, that's all, because there's no way you can trace it. But the barriers were there to serve as checks.
We left after three years, so I stated that I want to get closer to my family and also take the chance to prepare towards my retirement. You say no.
Addressing Adeba, Secretary of the National Union of GRA Workers, Ken Akudua, sent notice to the political class to put a stop to the practice of ordering custom officers and Ghana Revenue Authority staff to discharge and release impounded contraband goods whenever officers go on the field to generate revenue for the state.
The policy is not effective. The benchmark that has come has made it even worse. We know people doing fake invoices. They bring those fake invoices. When they come, then they demand the benchmark value in addition. Now, when you are not lucky and you want to behave like a proper custom man, somebody at the port wants to show you where power lies. He says, an importer, I'll move you, and the next day you are moved. Is that what we want? No. They can choose to listen or not to listen. These are the facts.
Speaking to JoyNews at the Adeba, Mr. Akudua says because the practice is affecting revenue generation, the union from September 2019 will kickstart a campaign dubbed Collect, Name and Shame, targeted at the influential people who, according to him, make their work very difficult.
We want to turn our negative target for the first half into positive. We are stepping down as union leaders. We are going down on the road to the port, to the offices. We are going to not only name our officers who connive and condone in their work, but also the excess political interferences in our work. Importers could be businessmen or they are businessmen. They want more profits and they'll do everything to get their profit. We on our part operation Collect, Name and Shame means that we shall stop containers whether protocol or not. We shall inspect whether the container contains the right documents and has paid the right duties. Just as officers who are also conniving with such importers will be named and shamed, we shall also name those people who are also influencing such officers to do those things.
Government, as part of the ECOWAS protocol, removed a number of custom officers from the vantage point to allow unhindered movement of vehicles. The union is, however, calling on governments to bring those men back because their absence is adversely impacting on revenue generation.
These officers were on the road to track goods in transit. Somebody collects his goods from Tabahabo, meant for Burkina Faso. The officers were on the road to guide and monitor these goods so that once they leave Tema, they end up in Burkina Faso. Now, people collect the goods from Tema, don't pay the duties. The goods are meant for Burkina Faso, and they end up in Ghana. If we have these officers on the road, they will track and monitor these goods and make sure that wherever they are supposed to go, they will get there. Goods meant for warehousings. Indeed, we need these officers back on the road. It could be ECOWAS policy. The lapses in that policy must be addressed.
The union, after rejecting a 5% increment bonus announced by the leadership, gave the board a one-week ultimatum to respond to their concerns. Else,
some very interesting scenes and thoughts there. So let's get on the line now and have a conversation on this further. Mr. Salifu Kanton is Executive Director of Development Alliance Ghana. He's also a member of the Tax Justice Coalition. Mr. Kanton, thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you, my dear sister.
I'm certain that this,
doing good.
Very well, sir. I'm certain this is not new to you. I mean, the issues that they've raised, interference by politicians, the recruitment issues that still has politics all over it, the release of contraband goods, and we'll talk about this one after the other. But from your perspective, how bad would you say this development is, based on what you know?
Well, my dear sister, let me say good evening to the good people of this country. In fact, what I have just listened to is not new, but it's sickening, and it's really quite very horrifying, given the backdrop that this is a country that is struggling to mobilize revenue to support our budget and transform this country. This is a country, when you look at our GDP, it is not really matching with the tax revenue. There's a very awkward correlation between our tax revenue and the size of our GDP. And all of these factors that we have that has just been aired are clearly indicative of the real challenges that we have to deal with as a country. Okay. In fact, it is akin to state capture if you analyze the issues quite clearly and get the underlying causes of these. In fact, it is very similar to the phenomena of state capture that has been discussed globally, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa.
Let's take it one after the other, Mr. Kanton, if you don't mind. Let's begin with the interference of politicians. They talk about how some big men are able to release or order the release of contraband goods when they are intercepted or when they are impounded by the service. What do you know about this, and how can we solve a problem like that?
I can tell you from where I sit and my interaction with the GRA officers at various regions, I'm likely based in the Upper West region. I can tell you that this is a nationwide phenomenon. There are goods that are intercepted by custom officers, and at midnight, or some minister somewhere, some DC somewhere, some chief executive somewhere, some CEO somewhere, call and instruct that those goods be released, or else some people will be fired or transferred. And that is likely a pattern. It's very symptomatic of our tax system, that there is a certain system that is, it is not based on professionalism. People are there employed to perform a professional duty, yet they seem to be not given the free will to do their normal job because of how we have poisoned our public service with the politics we play in this country.
So how do we deal with a problem like this if at all we want to deal with it, you know, at this point that the workers are raising this concern? What do we do?
The problem begins with the conversation we are having now. Okay. We must openly talk about it. And we must ask for a system where the politicians take their hands from the tax system. When we politicize our tax system, we basically undermine the ability of the system to mobilize the revenue that we need to transform our country. And the current situation is empty politicization of our tax system. Look at the kind of people being appointed to board of the Ghana Revenue Authority. Look at the kind of people that are being, in fact, there are times GRA even makes recruitment without making publications for qualified people to apply. So before you realize people are brought in and people are supposedly recruited and employed into the system without going through the due process. These are the kinds of attitudes and behaviors that undermine the functionality of a tax mobilization authority of this country. So the only way we can deal with it is to take politics out of it and to advocate for a more robust system where people are employed based on qualification and performance. That for me is the solution to dealing with this problem.
Taking politics out of it. I mean, one of the ways you'll agree, if we want to take politics out of it, that's if it will work in this system that we find ourselves in, is the failure to name and shame. You know, they've said that there are politicians who are interfering with the work and making the work difficult. But what they fail to do is also name these people because they know them, but they fail to name them. How do we go on without the naming of these people and letting the public know that these are the people responsible for our revenue shortfall, so the public can go after them as they should?
Well, and the reason is because they fear for their job. They have families. They want to take care of their family. So they are afraid that naming and shaming could cost them their job. But beyond naming and shaming, I think other institutions that play a check on Ghana Revenue Authority must be acting. For example, the Auditor General. What role can they play? I think in circumstances like this, they probably may not necessarily need to name and shame, but they need to probably provide information to some of these authorities so that they can conduct special audits to assess the tax liability of corporations or businesses that are supposedly evading some of these taxes and hiding under the cover of politics to evade taxes.
Right.
Maybe these other agencies can play a significant role in ensuring that we deal with this menace.
Right. Let me just draw your attention to this final concern that they have. They're blaming the paperless port system as being riddled with inefficiencies. And one thing that the government has said is that this is one of the most efficient systems, and they believe that they actually said it's increased our revenue generation. So whilst the union is complaining about it, government has made it a trump card, and it's talking about how good it has been. For you, what is really happening here, and how will it affect, or what's the possibility that it will affect our revenue generation?
Well, from where I said, I think technology likely supports improved efficiency. And I would like to hear the kind of, if they have reasons to believe that the technology is defective or dysfunctional or defective, they can point out those challenges, and I believe they can be remedied through the application of technology. But to talk about disbanding or putting aside the paperless, I disagree with that view. I think we can improve upon it. Certainly it's not perfect, but there are mechanisms through which we can follow. They can bring their grievances and suggestions to the management of the authority so that we can see how to fine-tune it and perfect it. But to put it aside and go back to the manual process, I disagree with that view.
Finally, and talking about the solution, civil society has always been a catalyst for development. Seeing as we have these issues, what role do you think the organizations, for example, that you represent, can help with the necessary engagement that can help us to deal with this problem?
Well, I'm aware the Tax Justice Coalition Ghana is already applying to these issues and is actually working to present certain papers and proposals to government as to how we can deal with these issues. I can tell you the reality is that these issues are undermining our ability to mobilize the needed revenue for the development of this country. So as a civil society body, we will continue to point out these issues. We will continue to challenge state authorities to rise up beyond the politics, the kind of politics that is a bit retrogressive in our part. We will try to challenge them to go beyond that so that we can think about Ghana, our country, and how we can all work together to make sure that it is better and good for all of us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Canton, for your time this afternoon. I've been speaking to Salifu Canton. He's Executive Director of Development Alliance Ghana. He's also a member of the Tax Justice Coalition.